lot of conversation with the coaches about their ability to really have full teams and the kind of participation that we used to have, because we do not have those facilities. So there was actually in the master plan, I'm sure there's probably no numbers, but that's something that we can certainly ask them to look at, along with the athletic director, and get some more supporting numbers. It's just not something Scott and I can talk to. I don't think. I apologize.
These SUNY community colleges that are doing better right now are ones who have robust athletic programs. If you look at Sullivan and Hudson Valley, they are not seeing the kinds of decline some of the other ones are seeing. So there's definitely an advantage of the line having robust athletics.
Hudson Valley actually did well. Hudson Valley did well.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, their enrollment did not look anything like the rest of the community colleges around there. I'll also add here that our last student trustee, Miguel, was a big advocate for this. Now, he was also studying, I think, sports
Yes.
management. Amina, do you hear anything as our student trustee? Since I put you on the line here for a moment.
Okay.
Do you hear anything about the students wanting more athletics or athletics?
Actually, I haven't.
Okay.
But not sports yet.
Okay. Thank you.
One of the other.
My point is we have to be careful in what we're saying. And if this body is bringing something to the county legislature saying by not having this and us asking you to spend $1.5 million because this is impeding our enrollment, we have to be able to back that up. So all that I would ask is going forward that we're a little bit more careful on our wording on things, because if we don't have numbers to back something up, it doesn't really look, it looks kind of disingenuous at best.
Okay. The other piece that the fields will help us with is being able to do sports camps, and there's a tremendous amount of money in sports camps over the summer, which would also allow us to make better use of the residence hall during the summer by being able to offer those programs. So, but your point is well taken.
Steve, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to make some comments here, that I do have some concerns with all of these resolutions collectively. Not so much in the individual items that we're considering spending on, but more the process. All right, this was not vetted by the Finance Committee. This was brought straight to the board with these resolutions. And similar to Angela's point, I haven't seen analysis to support these resolutions. You know, there are statements like it's going to help enrollment, but there's no real documentation or evidence. So for those reasons, I have concerns with these, all of these, you know.
Mr. Chairman, if these weren't properly vetted through the committee, I think it would be appropriate for them to be tabled tonight.
Well,
If the
I
board-
believe there's a time issue here.
Some of these are time sensitive, if I'm
Time
correct.
sensitive, yeah.
Right?
In getting it to the county and things.
That was the problem. The finance committee meeting was canceled. Yes.
When does it have to be submitted? I mean, I'm guessing it's more of an issue with the state than the county.
Well, it needs to meet the next legislative board meeting in order to get to SUNY in time for approval for this cycle. Do you have
When is the next
dates?
cycle?
Do you have
I don't
dates?
It'll be
know
next
the
year.
dates off.
Yeah.
But there is a legislative process for the county, and then there is a deadline for the state as well for submitting capital
Right.
projects for their budget process. And then make a decision.
Can we get an answer in the next half hour as
I
to
mean,
when
I
that
can tell
state
you,
deadline is?
The two parties are caucusing next Monday, and then there's committee meetings the following Thursday, with a board meeting the
Yeah.
following Monday. So it is a matter of days away.
Yeah, the county is one thing, but I mean, the county, we know that they would have a meeting next month. So when the state meeting is, seems like that would be more, you know, if the state's not meeting until November or December, this is a lot of money. And, you know, we don't have a great economy right now. Enrollment, we all know, is struggling. Is this really the best time for all of these expenditures?
So I will say that there are things here that we have to do as a college in terms of the FF&E and technology replacements and upgrades. These are things that are critical for us to invest in. They're computers that have reached end of life, and we don't want to be in a situation where we can't function or operate because we don't have working equipment. In terms of the Mechatronics Lab that we're working on for Fishkill, that's also a critical kind of issue if we're to take the fullest advantage of the funding that we got from the county to launch that. Educational equipment and technology, we can put off for another year if we have to. But that's about really enhancing the classroom experience, the learning experience for students as well. And so it's entirely up to the board about how you want me to proceed with this.
That's
if you want
a
to pull it.
small portion of the total funds that we're looking at. I mean, when we're talking about $2 million for Dutchess Hall renovations, $1.4 million for Hudson Hall, you know, the $1.5 million for sports. All of those things, I think having more discussion on. And, you know, again, I'm a huge proponent of saying when you vote on a capital plan, it is a plan. It does not mean that this is what you're going to do. You have further discussion on it.
Yeah.
So I think that really making sure that the process is fully vetted next time, you know, and anytime I see capital improvements on buildings, I'm always kind of questioning my own personal belief, which is if we want to succeed in the future, we need to be pushing towards online. And when we're doing more and more money on capital improvements to physical buildings, how much does that push us online and into the future?
You mean literally online education?
Absolutely.
It's definitely a trend in education. And you know that.
I do know that intimately,
Yeah.
and I don't like it.
I was going to say, some students
Yeah.
will thrive under that.
Yeah.
I will be the first to admit, I've said it before, I would not be that
Yeah, no.
student.
Right.
I have to be where I can see people and read the nuance of what they're saying, and I have to look at my fellow students and say, are they getting it? Is it just me?
Yeah.
Am I the dumb one here? That kind of thing.
It doesn't foster a community.
Well, agreed, but then again, some people don't have the opportunity to
Right.
enter in that community and create that.
Yeah, I know
Angela's a
that.
good example who's done her graduate work all online.
Yeah.
She's got the discipline for it. There are those of us who are undisciplined like me. Back to the more sensitive issue here. If there are concerns, certainly is a timing issue. The building upgrades, I know what you're saying because it seems counterintuitive if we're trying to go toward more distance learning, but you still have to keep your buildings
You do.
intact.
Yeah.
And some of our, Bridget can actually describe in very quick layman's terms what's going on with Hudson.
Hudson rains inside when it rains,
Yeah.
you know, and it's not the roof. The window, I actually have a picture in my office of them caulking the windows the year after the building opened. That's how long this building's been leaking. We haven't really done any upgrades to Hudson since the building opened, for the most part, in I think it was 1977. We did get the dates, though. Our capital plan, approved capital plan from the legislature has to be in Albany by the 15th of December.
Oh, so there's time.
So it has to,
That's
it has to be,
capital
so it
plan.
has to, these projects, if we're going to go forward with them, I'm sorry, with these projects, have to be, submitted to SUNY by December 15th, and it's 2 meetings with the legislature, which I believe is 2 months. So it'd be October, November, and then they have to be submitted with resolutions, approved resolutions from the county in December. Everybody has a different calendar. Unfortunately, this happens every year, just about.
So if I heard that correctly, you guys take 2 meetings?
I'm not
I believe it's 2
familiar with
meetings. It goes to the committee and then it goes to the full legislature, correct?
Well, for resolutions over 500, for projects over 500,000, they have to go before 2 legislative meetings.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that because there's bonding?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, definitely. Bonding needs to be
Yeah.
presented 1 month.
And then you
voted
vote the
And then it's
following
voted
month.
next.
So, all right, so that's why.
Okay. well
But
then-
either way, so if it's just being presented to the legislature this month, there would certainly be the opportunity for more discussion. if this board brings it forward tonight, and then with the understanding that if it's brought forward, that we are going to look at this more.
I get what you're saying, yes.
I mean, Steve, you're our representative from the legislature. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I mean, I had some of the same concerns as you did, that, you know, we're being presented with, you know, a brief, you know, description and justification of the project, but not any hard facts and numbers, which in many cases it's difficult to obtain, I understand
Yeah.
that. But I personally would have liked to see at least something more than we did. So that was my concerns that that I was raising for myself. And I would think the legislature would be in a similar situation, that they would need a little more in-depth analysis than what we've been presented so far.
Yeah, and remember, you need 18 votes for this to pass.
And
That's
do
the
we
legislature.
make a presentation ourselves to the committee?
Normally.
Normally, that's
Yeah.
the case at the committee meeting.
Right.
Yes.
And the committee meeting is before the full legislative meeting, because you
The
caucus, then
committee.
you have committee meetings on Thursday, you caucus on Mondays.
Right.
So if we move these forward, then we could still move them forward with more robust descriptions to the legislature, and then the legislature would have the opportunity to question the team that's
Yeah.
assembled to promote this.
Before voting on it.
Yeah.
November.
Because you've got 2 votes anyway.
Yeah, but the first meeting is where the legislature, the committee, hears all of this and reviews it. That comes up next week.
Next week, that's what I was saying, so whatever we put forward, I'm saying is we should maybe have more details with each.
Yep.
Okay.
By next Thursday's presentation to the committee, the legislative committee.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these are
But they
no-brainers,
sound-
like, you know,
No, we're gonna
capital
pass these
project number
tonight,
2
if we
is-
can.
Okay.
That's a no-brainer. So some of them are a little harder to justify to me. But again, maybe you have everything and can walk through it and say, this is why we need it, A, B, and C. But I don't think we have that tonight to feel totally comfortable with that. But I'm comfortable voting for it to move it forward, again,
I know
with
what
the
you're saying,
understanding.
yep. So, thank you.
What's the standard process that we use for these type of resolutions?
So typically, well, under Peter, we use the committee structure so that resolutions are presented to the appropriate committee. In many instances, they're presented to both finance and personnel because, as I've said, I think to you in our orientation, 80% of the costs are personnel costs here. Or salary plus fringe, my favorite term, benefits, because they're big. But at any rate, that's normally the process. Sheila Appel is the, Trustee Appel is the chair of the Finance Committee, and it was canceled. And Sheila is broadly hinting that she may want to step down from the board. So if so, then I will ask Steve if he will become chair of that committee, but thank you for smiling. I think I'm gonna take that as a yes. But that's normal process. And then once the committees work, then if this is worked out correctly, any questions that we have wouldn't just be to Bridget and to Peter, it would also be to the committee, the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
Because they would work through everything. Just like Angela, as the chair of the Personnel Committee, when they meet, and I usually try to sit in with them, because I'm ex officio as the chair, when they meet, they discuss everything. If Angela has issues, then there's research. And like Steve did have a conversation, I meant to try to pop in, but I was late for the Zoom, but with Peter yesterday,
Yes.
over some concerns he had and some asking for additional material. One of them was on what it costs right now for us to not have a sports field, and that was, I think, $19,500 if I saw it correctly.
19,000,
Yeah, because we have to pay to rent other sports fields, Dutchess Stadium, others that we pay for now. And then the costs of maintenance, I think Adam suggested it was about $25,000 a year, if I read that email correctly.
For the new facility?
For the new facilities?
It's estimated, depends anywhere between 10 and 25,000, depending on the type of turf that is used, seasonal changes, those sort of things.
Yeah, these would be all questions I would have and expect that a finance committee would
Yeah.
report on to us to.
Can
come
I
back
make a comment?
Please.
So, obviously, I've only been here a month and a half, right? But I think one of my main focuses when it was brought on by Dr. Jordan was to, one, alleviate some of the tasks that Bridget and Donna were overseeing as this role was empty, but also having them manage their day-to-day, so taking that off of them. And me being more strategic, and this is the area that I think I should, one of my focuses on is being in that strategic position to be able to provide this data and put it into a package to where we come to these meetings, it is clear. And we are making decisions, you are making decisions that are in the best interest of not just, the college here, the students, but also the community as a whole. So again, only here a month and a half, there's a lot of work to do, but I hope that I can start alleviating some of those questions. And if we do have those questions, like when the plan was approved back in July, bring them forward so that we can start researching them and providing that data and those answers to you, so when we come to these meetings, we all feel good about the decisions we're making moving forward.
Yes, and because, again, we have a large number of new members, new trustees. If you want to directly ask Adam, Vice President Rathbun, if you want to ask him a question, please do. But what I ask is that you copy the other trustees so they can see what your question is and he answers it. Because if we all have the same question, there's no reason for us to send 10 duplicate over and over again. Or you can just, I was going to say, or just send it over to Joy, and Joy will send it out. Yeah. So, but yes, I want to make sure everybody understands that we try to make decisions that are data informed. Because I've been serving longer, like Angela, a lot of the capital projects in the overall plan have been there for a while. They just kind of keep pushed forward into the next cycle because the determination is made by Bridget and now with Adam as well as to which are priorities. So it's more or less, I remember one time the first project I think I voted for was there was a flat membrane roof on a building that was leaking, and they had pictures showing how the leak was in the, and the sidewalks, the sidewalk staircases, people could just slip right down and sue us. So that became a priority because it was liability as well as safety issues. So I know I could have asked myself why these got moved forward, but I know Mechatronics because the time to act is now on that, and we had Stephen led the sort of charge in the county legislature to get the money to match that. And by the way, Mechatronics could also be described, thank you, Diana, as robotics, because people keep telling me, so what's that company, Mechatronics? And I thought the same thing. I had to Google the term. So, but it's it's advanced technology. But at any rate, normally that's the process. If that answers your question. Sorry, I went on and on.
Will the sports field be planned to have lights?
We haven't gotten that far yet. It'll be looked at as part of the whole process of doing the design and so on.
I think that was a concern with the old fields. They didn't have lights and they couldn't play past a certain time.
Like 4 o'clock in the winter.
We were still renting elsewhere when we had the fields.
See, good memory, Frank. Institutional knowledge there. You probably should look into lights because in the winter, which is fall, since we lose daylight savings time, it gets dark really early. So at any rate, any other questions?
Yeah, will these renovations for sports also be for Conklin Hall, like the basketball court? Because the same thing at exactly this time, it is pitch black over there. But I'll hear the basketball bouncing and I'm like, oh, people are out there, but it's dark. No. So same with the lights.
This project only addressed a multi-purpose field for baseball. What it does is it takes the baseball field, the baseball field, and the softball field, and lays out a soccer field there. Okay. So they're used for all 3 sports.
Okay, so
but it does not address the darkness on the basketball courts there.
So nothing for Conklin. Okay, gotcha.
We can take a look at that.
Any other questions?
That becomes another project.
Yes.
It's on my to-do list now.
Spending more money.
So then let's move on to the Middle States report. Dr. Rogers.
I'm Stephanie Bird. I'm my partners in crime.
Great. All right, so while we're pulling up the presentation, and I believe you received printed copies, we'll be sending out digital copies afterwards, but we wanted to really thank you for this time today. So I understand that we have a lot of business to cover, but we're really trying to toggle that line between moving through this material quickly and making sure that we've presented it to the Board of Trustees members. The Middle States reaccreditation is essential for us as an institution of higher education. If we are not accredited, we cannot, our students can't receive financial aid, we can't operate, we can't deliver programs, we are not a college. So we are in the midst of our self-study. We're approaching a pretty serious milestone. Our team chair, who will be leading the team to evaluate our self-study, is coming to visit us in October. And so Scott and I, and our co-chair, Michael Hall, who wasn't able to be here tonight, wanted to make sure we presented some information on the findings so far so that everybody is aware. But we will also be visiting each of the subcommittees of the Board of Trustees in the coming weeks ahead of our team chair's visit, so that we have an opportunity to provide more details on the information and ask and answer some of your more detailed questions. So that's why we're here today. We're not clicking. Turn it on. It's on. Not on. All right, we wanted to review just some of the overall structure. I know that there are several new board members, and we just wanted to explain how this all came to be. So the self-study organization has been a campus-wide effort. More than 70 individuals on campus have directly touched this process. We have a steering committee in place. We have 3 self-study co-chairs, as I mentioned, myself, Scott Snackenberg, Michael Hall, and we have 8 really essential working groups. Now, I can't name all of the people who have been involved in this process, but I wanted to take the opportunity to publicly thank the chairs of the working groups in this forum. So very quickly, the working group 1 co-chairs are Michael Hall and Mark Condon, formerly chaired by Dean Bowata, Maria Bowata. The working group 2 chair, Angela Romano, our registrar. The working group 3 chair, faculty member Tommy Costello. Working Group 4 co-chairs Rachel Mead and Colleen Trogish. Working Group 5, faculty member Kevin Kavanaugh. Working Group 6, Director of Grants Martin Schneider. Working Group 7 co-chairs Chrissy Mitchell, who heads up our Teaching and Learning Center, and Karen Ingham, who's a department chair and a faculty member. And Working Group 8, chaired by Tina Kiernan, one of our librarians. I mention this because all of these folks are contributing in service to the college, and we really so appreciate their work and their leadership on this project. These folks weren't put into place randomly, and the groups weren't put together randomly. We followed some pretty strict guidelines that we had laid out in the self-study design that was approved by Middle States previously. Of note, I just want to make sure everyone understands each working group, in addition to having leadership and working members, has a liaison to our evidence inventory group, and also has a member of our diversity council. And we wanted to make sure that the values of the institution were well reflected in the process. Some major milestones to date. Again, this process began all the way back in fall 2020 when the initial members, the core of the steering committee, attended an institute hosted by Middle States, the MSCHE, Middle States Commission on Higher Education. We created the steering committees and the working groups in spring 21. The self-study design was approved in fall 21 after a great deal of work. The first chapter drafts and the campus forums were shared through spring 2022. We will be submitting the first complete report draft to our team visiting chair on October 11th, and then the team chair visit is happening on October 25th. So right now we are here, and it's a pretty good place to be. I don't want you to think, if you're new, that the October 25th visit is the end. We will be hosting an entire team in April, but let's stick with where we are. Of the standards that we have that are given to us by Middle States that every institution has to demonstrate compliance with, we have some major findings. Standard 1 focuses on mission and goals. And one of the first things that we realized is that the mission that we have as a college is not necessarily designed to be deconstructed and assessed. In Middle States language, it's a little bit more like a vision statement. So Working Group 1 really had their work cut out for them. In addition, as some of you may recall, we were working with an expiring strategic plan that we extended and expanded briefly. And so although the process of strategic planning has now been going on, that was an initial finding of this working group, that work needed to happen, and it has in fact been happening. I know you'll be hearing about that later this evening. One of the things that this group also found is that although the strategic planning process on campus has historically been very participatory and inclusive, there wasn't necessarily an articulated outline for making sure that there was a collaborative and timely review on a schedule for the strategic planning process. And so that's one of the recommendations that we'll see in this chapter. Additionally, one of the other things that this chapter will have to be updated from the work of last year is, in addition to the work of PAC on strategic planning, there's been some realignment, some structural realignment, strategic realignment that's been happening. And so you'll see those changes reflected in the draft as well. When we talk about Standard 2 is all about ethics and integrity. The findings of the working group have been very strong here. I think one of the things I'd like to point out, and this is a work in progress, the group really noted that we are, that we find it's reported that parents or external stakeholders or prospective students have trouble navigating the website, finding some of the things that they need to find. And we are, in fact, in the process of a website redesign, so it's very positive that we get to talk about this, since that was one of the critical findings in this area. And that's about transparency of communicating information. So Standard 3 is about the design and delivery of the student learning experience. And again, we were very pleased to have positive findings in this area. We have a very active and engaged faculty, and we have some clearly established processes for assessing academic work. This is really wonderful because in the past Middle States evaluation, we did not necessarily have such clear standards in place for assessing. So the fact that we know that we're doing a great job on the design and delivery of the student learning experience is a definite plus that we'll be talking about here and again in Standard 5. I want to point out this last point. It is an important point for us here at DCC. There was a recent lack of promotions. We have been seeing changes in the economy. We're all aware of post-pandemic trends. And there has been some decreased morale among faculty and professional staff. This is certainly a finding of the self-study. And if you know anything about Middle States or accreditors, you don't cover up findings. You own them, and you talk about how you're going to address them. I did want to pass this off to Scott briefly. He's going to share a short overview of a survey that was done that really brought this into light.
So what I'm going to talk about is the Great Colleges to Workforce survey, which was done mostly last March and April. We had all of our due faculty and staff members, as well as management confidential, and about 25% of our CSEA staff and part-time staff were eligible to respond. And we had a response rate of just under 50%, which is really strong in this day and age when it's hard to get people to respond to electronic surveys. So the results were not pretty. We scored below average on each of the 8 or 9 areas where they were asking for the opinions of our staff. Our highest scores, which are still slightly below average, were for the effectiveness of supervisors and chairs. The lowest scores, and they were on several of them, but this was the one that was the furthest below average, was on the competence in senior leadership. So it clearly shows that there's this is clear evidence that the morale questions that were coming up with the working group are absolutely happening amongst our faculty and staff. The morale is lower among faculty than it is among staff, but even among staff, it's well below average compared to similar community colleges. And I have to say, done at the same time. It's easy to see this and say, oh, it's all about COVID. Well, the other colleges were going through COVID too, and our responses were still substantially lower than they were for the other colleges. And I'll turn it back to Susan for the next
Scott, real quickly, do you know how many of the colleges that were part of this survey also didn't have a contract with their employees at the time?
That I do not know, but I mean, yeah, the timing of it was particularly bad.
I just want to say I think that might be a factor in this decision as well, because that was a long time to go without a contract.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Michael, because the timing of the survey, right, the contract was not settled. There had been some recent announcements about promotions. And so these findings are certainly contextualized. But as I said, you don't cover things up with middle states. Standard 4 is all about the student experience. And we've had several positive findings in this area as well. So there have been a host of initiatives over the past several years that have been directly aimed towards improving the student experience on campus. Some of these you may have heard of. That we've been engaged in Guided Pathways as a Guided Pathways campus. The continuation of that work happens in the ongoing Title III grant that we were awarded. We have moved to a multiple measures placement system for English and math. So for example, we don't unnecessarily tie students up in semesters and semesters of remedial coursework in math and English if we can place them higher and provide just-in-time support through perhaps a co-requisite class model. Another big challenge here, though, was really that there was a loss of on-campus mental health services and some on-campus tutoring. And so this was a big finding for the standard in this chapter. We had moved to many remote services, which seemed, like a perfectly appropriate thing to do when we were toggling back and forth between potential lockdowns. But since then, the campus has come to a different decision, and we've been working to reinstate these services. So, for example, you're probably familiar with the hire of the director of mental and, acting director right now of mental and physical health services. We're also in the process of hiring part-time on-campus counselors, mental health counselors for our students. We have, as part of the new realignment that we've been working on, we have a new associate dean for instruction and learning of the Learning Commons, and part of the charge for that area is to reinvigorate our on-site tutoring services. So in addition to the Math and Science Center and the Writing Center, which has continued to host on-campus tutoring services, looking at ways to boost tutoring services in other disciplines. And then very related to this, I'm going to hand this over to Scott again for a moment, is the result of the SESI survey. So this is the survey on student engagement.
Before I mention that, I will say also that the mental health counseling and the tutoring issues came up with 3 or 4 of the working groups. We had to consolidate them here, but a number of the working groups felt it was a real issue, so we could see that it was a big issue campus-wide. It wasn't just something under this standard. So in terms of student engagement, there's a community college survey of student engagement. This also was done last spring, about the same time as Great Colleges to Work For. The response rate here was only 8%. So right away we're seeing our students are not particularly engaged, at least in terms of answering a survey. Response rates do tend to be low among students now, but that's particularly low for a survey of this type. The results were not as negative as they were for faculty and staff, but they were still much lower than they were 6 or 7 years ago when we last did this survey, when students were extremely engaged. Right now, our students are roughly average compared to other community colleges. Some of the things where we are statistically significantly different is our students are more likely to come to class without completing their assignments. They're more likely to skip class. They're less likely to be doing work that's developing their work towards a job or job-related skills, and they're less likely to spend time with numerical problems. Things they're more likely to be spending time with are writing papers, and they also are more likely to be using the library. But overall, it was just kind of average, not where we would like to be, not where we used to be with engagement. So it's something that we have to think about. Do we want students to be more engaged? How are we going to do that online for some of them, because 30% of our students are only online? How are we going to do it on campus to revitalize campus here to get more engagement with students? So I'll move on to the next standard, Standard 5, which is effective educational assessment. So this area was a tremendous challenge for DCC last time Middle States came here, and it resulted in us having to go back to them a year later with an update and having to get it. We didn't have full approval really because of it. We've made huge strides here. We have strongly developed procedures and outcomes both for programs and campus-wide that we're looking at. Their gains continue to be made in terms of how that's communicated to different parts of campus. So it's an area where I think now is probably one of our greatest strengths, where last time it was our biggest downfall. There are still some findings where we have work to do, that program-related budgetary decisions need to be more transparently communicated. And we have ongoing challenges with student success, some of them COVID-related with enrollment and retention, and pass rates in some of our largest courses have declined in the past 2 or 3 years since COVID. So we need to work on what we're going to do to turn that around. Standard 6 is about planning, resources, and institutional improvement. I think the big things we see between Fishkill and the airport and some of the new programs, those have been in the planning stages for a long time, have come to fruition and have been great successes. People were finding that the Board of Trustees meetings in the Zoom format allowed for a greater audience, more of our faculty and staff were able to see budgetary things that were going on. And we see not a whole lot of people here. The Zoom meetings would typically have 80 to 100 people, so it made a big difference. And then the final one I'll mention is the Foundation and the Grants Office have been having great success in getting funding and resources for strategic initiatives and for some of our more needy students as well. If we move on to Standard 7, and here I want to spend a little more time with you because this is the standard on governance, leadership, and administration, and it's probably the one most relevant to the board. So let me just read the standard so that you're aware of what it is. The institution is governed and administered in a manner that allows it to realize its stated mission and goals in a way that effectively benefits the institution, its students, and other constituencies it serves, even when supported by or affiliated with governmental, corporate, religious, educational system, or other unaccredited organizations. The institution has education as its primary purpose, and it operates as an academic institution with appropriate autonomy. And again, here, many of our findings here were very positive, that our professional staff handbook, the Board of Trustees manual, New York State education law, all outline ways and are ways that we follow that make sure that everything is done properly. All of our presidents have been appropriately credentialed, the same with our staff. So in this way, and we're also periodically reviewing. So I think all very positive results for this standard. Areas where we have more works in progress. So our CSEA staff is not particularly been a big part of college governance. There's a newly created Professional Service Alliance Committee, and I think we want to see how that can become a bigger part of the governance process. We've also had long-standing vacancies. Adam is here to fill one of them, but we all have had the Associate VP of Informational Technology has been vacant for a couple of years, a very important position. Particularly with all the changes with realignment, we need an updated, and have now, an updated organizational chart. It's important that we have that. IT infrastructure, both in staffing and equipment, is something that we have to improve on, and the evaluation process for administrative units. Some of the broad findings we've already talked about, how academic assessment has now become one of the biggest strengths that we have. The student engagement has declined, the faculty and staff satisfaction with working here has declined, and I think, as you'll hear from Tim and Renee's presentation later, that's something that the President's Advisory Council is starting to work on. They're bringing those findings to that council as they work on strategic planning and looking towards the future. We want to be able to incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion in a more meaningful and authentic ways, and that continues to be a point of development. And A big thing certainly with COVID is the nature of teaching and delivery of student services has changed radically, and as we look forward, we have to figure out how we're going to assess that and look at it in ways where we can determine whether what's working for us. So I want to move now to our timeline. So this goes beyond, we're right now at the place where we're getting the chapters into shape, and we'll be submitting them on October 11th to Quentin Bullock. His preliminary campus visit was happening on October 25th. He'll be here for a long day. He will be here at the board meeting that evening for the workshop, and he'll be meeting with us briefly for his summation after that workshop. Prior to the workshop, you are all invited to join us for a light dinner reception if your schedule is allowed. It would be great if everybody could be there for that. His feedback will be back to us by November 21st, and we will have to have our final draft, our final copy of the self-study to him by February 19th, and we also have to have all of our evidence uploaded to their portal by that time. And then 2 months later, in April, they will be visiting for a couple of days and talking with many of us here and seeing how the process worked here and just how we were doing on the different standards. So with that, do we have any other questions?
Anyone? That's a lot of material covered.
That's a great job.
And we appreciate it. This is, for the newer members, this has actually been an ongoing process. Many of us have read these. That's why there's some that have been updated, because there is an organizational chart that I think all of us have had a chance to see now that Peter has shown us. So but this will continue really through next year, obviously. So, and if you can stay for dinner, it is important. When we did this 5 years ago, oh dear, I'm the only one left from back then. Wow. Okay, when we did this 6 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever, they want to see engagement by the trustees, basically.
Yeah.
They do. So it helps, because we were all perky cheerleaders last time, so that's what I'll be expecting, each of you. A big DCC cheer going up every time. So thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you. And we will, as I said, be visiting the committees, so you'll have another opportunity to speak with us.
The next item on the agenda is liaison reports. For DCC Association, that would normally be me, but we have not had a meeting since our last meeting here. Our next meeting is September 30th, and I've appointed Dara Cloud to be, yes? No, I was making sure it's you, yes. And I've appointed Frankie to be, excuse me, Frank Costello Jr., to our newest member, and welcome, by the way, and thank you for joining us, to be the liaison to the DCC Foundation. They just had their last meeting. Peter, is there anything you want to summarize quickly for me?
There are new officers. The new chair of the foundation is Roy Frieda at this point. And Lisa Morris is vice chair.
And Lisa's great. And I think Michael Graham is now the treasurer, which that's great that you got Michael back up there. And he's been the treasurer for so many organizations. This is old hat for him by now.
He was our treasurer for 4 years, probably about 8 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, so at any rate. There being no other items on the workshop agenda, do you guys want to take a break, or are you ready to go right into our regular meeting?
Break.
Break. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Ms. Sheila Appel. Ms. Amina Augustin Mohammed.
Present.
Mr. Frank Costella.
Present.
Mr. Stephen Caswell.
Present.
Ms. Dara Cloud.
Present.
Mr. Michael Dupree.
Present.
Miss Angela Flesland.
Present.
Miss Lisa Gardy. Mr. Ibis Guzman.
Present.
Miss Linda Pratt.
Present.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Please join me as we pledge our fealty to the Stars and Stripes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to get a motion to amend the agenda to move personnel and community relations up above finance and facilities. That way, Linda, I think, will feel better about seeing her resolutions. She has to read if Angela goes first. So making a motion to relocate those two to A and B.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And then may I get a motion to approve the agenda as revised?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item is the election of officers for our next fiscal and academic year. And Trustee Flesland was the chair of the nominating committee. I believe you have a report to submit.
Sure. I'd like to bring forward Michael Dupree as chair, myself as vice chair, and Dara Cloud as secretary.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none under Robert's rules, that's called closing the nominations instead of asking for the motion. All in favor of the new officer slate, please raise your hand or just please say aye. Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, colleagues, for your confidence, and thank you for stepping up, Angela and Dara. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next item on the agenda will be consideration of the minutes of the meetings both for August 16th and August 23rd. Everyone's had a chance to review them. I did, and I saw no errors.
Did we skip one?
Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any public comment tonight. I did skip over, but that's accidental. No one signed up to speak before the public, from the public tonight. So the next item would be consideration of the minutes and making a motion to approve the 16th and the 23rd as submitted.
So moved.
Thank you. One of you guys can second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is committee reports. As always, I will note that all the reports are discussed either in committee or prior in the workshop portion of the meeting. And the first item will be Personnel and Community Relations. Chair Flesland, Vice Chair Flesland.
Resolution 2023-7. I offer the following and move its adoption. Be it resolved that based upon the recommendation of the president of the college, the retirement of Dr. Ellen Gambino, Provost and Vice President of Instruction and Learning, is hereby approved effective August 1st, 2022, in accordance with the settlement agreement Appendix A, dated September 21st, 2022. That approval is granted to pay the appropriate regular retirement benefits earned, including payment of accrued vacation and sick time to TIAA and New York State Deferred Compensation accounts, as specified by Dr. Gambino. And in recognition of Dr. Gambino's dedicated service to Dutchess Community College, she be granted Emeritus status upon her retirement. And be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees extends its sincere appreciation to Dr. Gambino for her valuable contributions to the college's educational program during her tenure and wishes her the very best in her retirement. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, I believe. Any nays or abstentions? There being none, Trustee Vice Chair Flesland.
Resolution 2023-8. I offer the following and move its adoption. Whereas in the past, the Board of Trustees has extended benefits outlined in the college's contract with Dutchess United Educators, with some exceptions to the management and confidential employees. A review of these benefits was undertaken, and it was determined that management confidential benefits should be specifically and separately defined. Now, therefore, be it resolved that based upon the recommendation of the president of the college, the benefits as specified in the attached document, which shall be made part of the official minutes of this meeting, are hereby approved for management confidential staff. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Angela. Next item on the agenda is Finance and Facilities, and since Sheila is not with us tonight as the chair, and we've had a request from Trustee Caswell not to read these, we're going to have one of our newer members is going to make her debut at the reading podium tonight. Linda.
Here we go. Resolution number 2023-01. I offer the following resolution and move its adoption. Whereas Dutchess County Community College has submitted a new funding request for a capital project for FF&E and technology replacements and upgrades with a total estimated cost of $200,000 to the SUNY Office for Capital Facilities. And whereas upon approval by SUNY Board of Trustees, the project will be submitted for inclusion in the state budget as a new capital appropriation in the 2023 to 2024 budget cycle. And whereas the state funds would cover the state share of 50% of this project, and whereas the sponsor share of this capital project, $100,000, would be funded through capital chargeback funds, now therefore to be it resolved that the following capital project is hereby authorized and approved in the amount indicated below. FF&E and technology replacements and upgrades, $200,000 is the estimated cost. The state's appropriation is $100,000. Sponsor share capital chargeback is $100,000. And be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Dutchess County Legislature for its consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dara. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions?
Nays.
One nay. Thank you. Linda, next resolution is yours as well.
Okay, resolution number 2023-02. I offer the following resolution and move its adoption. Whereas Dutchess County Community College has submitted a new funding request for a capital project for Mechatronics and HVAC Lab with a total estimated cost of $500,000 in the SUNY Office for Capital Facilities. And whereas upon approval by the SUNY Board of Trustees, the project will be submitted for inclusion in the state budget as a new capital appropriation in the 2023 and 2024 budget cycle, and whereas the state funds would recover the state share of 50% of this project, and whereas the sponsor share of this capital project, $250,000, would be funded through the chargeback funds, and whereas the project involves 1, maintenance or repair involving no substantial changes in an existing structure or facility, or 2, the replacement, rehabilitation, or reconstruction of a structure of a facility or facility in kind on the same site, including upgrading buildings to meet building or fire codes. Now, therefore, to be it resolved, it is now for therefore be it resolved, it is hereby determined pursuant to the provisions of the State Environmental Quality Review Act 8 NYECL Section 0101 and its implementing regulations, Part 617 of 6 NYCRR, that this project is a Type 2 action within the meaning of Section 610.5C1 and 2 of 6 NYCRR, and accordingly is of a class of actions which do not have a significant impact on the environment, and no further review is required. And be it further resolved that the capital project is hereby authorized and approved in the amount indicated below. Mechatronics and HVAC Lab, estimated total cost $500,000, the state share appropriation $250,000, the sponsor share capital chargeback $250,000, and be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Dutchess County Legislature for its consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Angela. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And nays or abstentions?
Nay.
Thank you. And by the way, that's the New York Environmental Conservation Law. I mean, I could tell you what all
Thank
these
you.
mean, but you don't need to know them. Trust me. And what
I'm
happens when we
learning.
do seeker. Yeah.
I'm learning.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, resolution number 2023-03. I offer the following resolution and move its adoption. Whereas Dutchess County Community College has submitted a new funding request for a capital project for the educational equipment and technology with a total estimated cost of $500,000 to the SUNY Office for Capital Facilities. And whereas approval by the SUNY Board of Trustees, the project will be submitted for inclusion in the state budget as a new capital appropriation in the 2023 to 2024 budget cycle. And whereas the state funds would cover the state share of 50% of this project, and whereas the sponsor share of this capital project, $250,000, would be bonded in accordance with SUNY funding policy and procedures for capital projects, and resolved that the following capital project is hereby authorized and approved in the amount indicated below. Educational equipment and technology, estimated total cost $500,000, state's share appropriation $250,000, sponsor share $250,000, and be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Dutchess County Legislature for its consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Frank? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And nays or abstentions?
Nay.
Thank you, Steve. Back to Linda.
Okay, resolution number 2023-04. I offer the following resolution and move its adoption. Whereas Dutchess County Community College has submitted a new funding request for a capital project for Hudson Hall upgrades and renovations. Upgrade and renovations design with a total estimated cost of $1.4 million to the SUNY Office for Capital Facilities. And whereas upon approval by the SUNY Board of Trustees, the project would be submitted for inclusion in the state budget as a new capital appropriation in the 2023 and 2024 budget cycle. And whereas the state funds would cover the state share of 50% of this project, and whereas the sponsor share of this capital project, $700,000, would be bonded in accordance with SUNY funding policy and procedures for capital projects. And whereas the project involves either 1, maintenance or repair involving no substantial changes in an existing structure or facility, or 2, the replacement, rehabilitation, or reconstruction of a structure or facility in kind on the same site, including upgrading buildings to meet building or fire codes, now therefore to be it resolved, it is hereby determined pursuant to the provisions of New York State Environmental Quality Review Act 8, NYECL Section 0101, and its implementing regulations, Part 6117 of 6 NYCRR, that this project is a Type 2 action within the meaning of Section 617.5 C1 and 2 of 6 NYCRR, and accordingly is of a class of actions which do not have a significant impact on the environment, and no further review is required. And be it further resolved that the following capital project is hereby authorized and approved in the amount indicated below. Project name, Hudson Hall upgrades and renovations design, estimated cost, $1.4 million, state share appropriation, $700,000, sponsor share, $700,000, and be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Dutchess County Legislature for its consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Amina. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions?
Nay.
Thank you, Steve. And by the way, Linda, I think for the last two, you can just say whereas, since you're repeating the exact same dialogue in all of these, with the one about the maintenance, because these are basically secret things.
Yeah. Okay.
Type 2 actions have already been determined by the Department of Environmental Conservation that they will have no environmental impact, so we don't have to do any further review.
Okay.
So you can just say the whereas on both of those.
Okay. All right, I think I got that.
The first whereas and then the
Right.
resolved.
I mean, we
Yeah.
technically only
Yeah.
have to read the first
Why don't we
whereas
do
and then
that?
the resolves. That's,
Oh, the first
That'll
the first whereas and then
Yep.
the resolved?
because they're already in the record because they're printed up in the record itself.
Okay. Resolution number 2023-05. I offer the following resolution and move its adoption, whereas Dutchess County Community College has submitted a new funding request for a capital project for Dutchess Hall renovations, Phase 1, with a total estimated cost of $2 million to the SUNY Office for Capital Facilities. And resolved, it is hereby resolved at the bottom, the second resolve, resolved that the following capital project is hereby authorized and approved in the amount indicated below. Dutchess Hall renovations, Phase 1, estimated cost, $2 million. State share appropriation, $1 million. Sponsor share, $1 million. And be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Dutchess County Legislature for its consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dara. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions?
Nay.
Thank you, Stephen. And Linda, your last one,
And
thank
the
you.
last one. Resolution number 2023-06, whereas Dutchess County Community College has submitted a new funding request for a capital project for sports fields improvements with a total estimated cost of $1.5 million to the SUNY Office for Capital Facilities. And resolved that the following capital project is hereby authorized and approved in the amount indicated below. Project, sports field improvements, estimated total cost, $1.5 million. State's share appropriation, $750,000. Sponsor share, $750,000. And be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Dutchess County Legislature for its consideration.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is that Amina? Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions?
Nay.
Thank you, Steve. No, wait, vote, two.
Nay.
Nay. Frank, sorry, thank you.
So it passed.
So we had two, making sure Joya heard, we have two nays?
3 nays.
3 nays.
3 nays. It
I
does
thought I
not
heard
pass.
you. I thought I heard you.
So
So
3 nays.
so that motion does not pass. Wait,
Yeah, Caswell's lost, yeah.
yes, because we only have
5 to 3.
5 to 3, so
5 to
it
3.
it takes a 6, it takes
Yes.
6 to pass, a majority. Thank you, Linda and Steve, for that one. The next item on the agenda is report of the student trustee. Amina?
Hi.
It's here before you knew it.
Yeah. All right. So first, the Student Government Association. We have 5 new clubs: Dungeons and Dragons, Music Appreciation, Rugby, Naturalists, Pre-Med, and we brought back Black Student Union and Aviation. Right now, a discussion, something that everybody's talking about right now, is transportation for students going to take to their labs off campus. Aviation students, we're aware that this was something, partnering with the bus was something that was done a while ago. However, it didn't work out with not enough people signing up, but it's something that's brought back and students are interested in and would like to see happen again. So that's in the works right now.
Can I just interrupt you real quickly? Just to explain for our newer members that the Dutchess County Loop bus system, we actually had our own line. We split the cost, I believe, with Bridget's still here, with Marist. And it came up and served both, and it brought them to downtown Poughkeepsie where they could then transfer, I believe.
It's the H line, which runs between here and Marist. It runs to Main and Market, down to the mall, and that kind of did a shorter route.
Right, but they could transfer in downtown Poughkeepsie to other locations.
Yeah.
So, and I don't, when we first started it, we did have a lot of ridership, I think, or at least initially there were a lot of riders.
When we started it, all students, faculty, staff, were able to ride the bus, it was called the Loop at the time, at no cost. And we actually bumped the ridership over the entire system. So that was good, but over time, students started, everybody got into Uber and Lyft, and the ridership really went down, and it wasn't cost effective.
I just want to make sure I knew that the determination was really a cost item, because it was expensive for us to operate if there weren't enough students. And it still gets me that they're Uber and Lyft over free? Never mind.
The route still exists.
Yes.
The county didn't take it away. They had transportation money that's been funded
Thank you. I'm sorry, Amina. Please
No, you're
continue.
all right, yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, Amina. Please
No,
continue.
you're all right, yeah. Okay, and right now, Conklin Hall is working on a safe Halloween. They're talking about opening back up the trash room in the dorms and seeing about providing more toiletries for the residents. Okay. So, any questions on those? Okay, all right. Right now, what I'm trying to work on is I've started speaking with Thomas Duffy, the purchasing agent, about getting a business credit card for student activities. Right now, Matt Hanlon, the director of student activities, is every single event for students has been out of pocket, although he does get reimbursed. That is just kind of weird that we don't have a designated card for student activities that he can just, use. So I'm talking to, I was originally talking to Thomas Duffy about that, and then he CC'd Christopher Diaz, I don't want to pronounce it. Thank you very much. Say it one more time. Descanio. About this. So it's in the works. And the last thing that I'm also talking to him about is possibly getting a colored printer in the library for the students. Right now, the only colored printer that students can access, to my knowledge, is the one in the writing center, and you can't even just go in there and just print it. You have to email one person in there, so it's kind of funky, and it's weird that we don't have that in the library. So I spoke to Tina Kiernan and Bonnie Gallagher, and they both told me that there is one, but it is not for students, so that's also weird. So that's something that I'm also talking to Thomas and Christopher about. And that is all. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions for Amina? That was very comprehensive, and I know that from emails with you that you were nervous about it. You need to be nervous at all. You did a flawless job.
Oh, thank you.
And this is what we like to hear, by the way, or at least speaking for this trustee, is to hear what their interests are and their needs. I'm not really sure what a safe Halloween means. But
So Safe Halloween is just a title, because Halloween can be dangerous. We're just basically like dorm trick-or-treating. They're thinking about doing something in the dorm. We're just calling it Safe Halloween. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And again, I appreciate the time you took to put into that as well. Next item on the agenda is the report of the chair. So first we had, was that just this morning? Yes. I want to thank Trustee Caswell, sorry, for attending the meeting this morning with the ACEN, which is the Nursing Accreditation Visiting Team. It was a very pleasant hour that we spent, and I know that they're still making their way around, and they'll be here until 2 more days, I think, until Thursday. Yeah. So but they were very candid and forthright in their comments with us this morning. Would you say that, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely.
We kind of got the idea there's going to be a recommendation coming that we already know.
We heard that in one of the questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also want to thank County Executive Mark Molinaro, as well as Chairman of the Legislature, Greg Pulver. We had a signing ceremony for our due contracts last week, and this was, as Mark said, this is the first time that all 4 county collective bargaining agreements were ready at the same time, so it was a big deal. There's been a goal to have it all signed at one fell swoop. And President Jordan, I was there, as well as Dr. Steger, the head of the union, and we all put our John Hancocks on and had pictures taken, et cetera. So it's always nice to see the support from the legislature. DCC also hosted its annual Dutchess Classic Walkway Races. That's 5 miles, 10 miles, a half marathon. On Sunday, September 18th, we had nearly 700 participants. And this year's club president is our very own Thomas Story, the Computer Information Systems Lab assistant. I think I mentioned earlier that the College Association's next meeting is next week on September 30th. We'll be also electing new officers there. And then for the DCC Foundation, there was the Dr. David Conklin lecture featuring Dr. Jill Lepore, who's a Harvard historian and a writer for The New Yorker. I've seen her before at the 92nd Street Y. She's also very humorous at times, in addition to being intelligent. There was a VIP dinner followed by a lecture and a book signing, and I'm happy to report that it was a full house. Congratulations, Diana. The next Board of Directors meeting is going to be held, or the last one was held Friday, September 23rd. Peter reported briefly on the new officers. Again, Raymond Frieda is the new chair. Ray is a graduate of this college, I'm happy to say, and he actually works in Manhattan, I believe, in an accounting firm, and so he travels back just to come to these, and that's a real show of commitment. And please thank Ray for stepping up, because I know the last chair had to step down.
And he did purchase a house up here. So
Oh, he did?
Yeah,
Okay. That's a long schlep to go back and forth, so. And that more or less concludes my report, except again to say I want to thank all three of the new trustees that I got to swear in, two under Linda and the newest under Joya with Frank. So we appreciate your interest and jumping right in, because you did really jump right in. I mean, Derek's not agreed to be secretary, so that's jumping really right in. So thank you all. Next item is Peter's report of the representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to take a moment to thank and welcome all of our new board members to the board. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to working with each of you. And not to leave our continuing board members out, it's been an ongoing pleasure working with you as well. And thanks for your ongoing counsel and advice and providing a sense of direction for the college. In the interest of time, I am going to postpone the presentation that I had planned on strategic planning. So we will circle back to that presentation next month when we meet. Okay? So that does it for my report.
Thank you. Those of us who haven't eaten yet will probably appreciate that. So, are there any other items for other business, meeting announcements, or anything for future agendas? If there are none, the date of the next meeting is October 25th. We will have the team leader for Middle States accreditation up here then, as you've all heard, and he will be watching us in our meeting, as well as, I'm going to guess, talking to us beforehand, or at least sometime during the time period here. So please make certain that you can make that meeting. If not, please let Joya and myself know. And I get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Surely there's a second. Yes, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? There being none, thank you to the college, as always, providing the resources to live stream and record this. And thank you to my colleagues. And thank you for the audience for your patience and forbearance tonight.